Let's get the analysis. Melinda Haring joins us, Eurasia specialist at the Atlantic Council and senior community engagement advisor at Razom for Ukraine. Melinda, always a pleasure to have you on France 24. Thanks for joining us. Were you taken by surprise by Trump's seeming change of tone?
Hi, Mark. It's great to be with you. So I think that the idiom for the Trump administration is that anything is possible. So I wasn't surprised. A lot of us have been betting that Trump was going to harden his line. Eventually, he was going to get so fed up with Vladimir Putin, and he was going to say, okay, you think I'm a wimp? Let me show you who's a wimp. And we see that. His policy has changed. His rhetoric has changed. But Mark, you have to follow the money. I don't see any new major weapons commitments. I see Donald Trump basically realizing he can't make any progress. And he's telling the Europeans, ladies and gentlemen, this is your problem, and trying to distance himself from the war in Ukraine.
So in a sense, Trump saying what he's saying is all well and good. It amounts basically to words. He'll be pulling away. But of course, I imagine he perhaps sees an opportunity business-wise to make money from arms.
Absolutely. So that was the thing that really stands out in his statement yesterday. He said, we're going to continue to sell weapons to NATO, and NATO can do whatever they want with those weapons. So green light on the weapons sales, Mark, green light on intel support. So that's not going to change. And the current packages that we have in place between the United States and Ukraine will continue as well. So it's really no change. It's a big shift in rhetoric, though. And if there is, I would be watching, though, the details. Will there be any sanctions? I don't expect President Trump to put any real additional sanctions on Russia. We know that he's very hesitant to do that. But will the United States authorize another supplemental package in Congress? At the moment, it doesn't look like that. But again, anything is possible with the Trump administration. This is the best moment Ukraine has had, though, rhetorically, with the Trump administration. And you saw skepticism in Kiev, but I think there's a lot of hope, and there's a lot of encouragement that President Zelensky was able to move Trump from that horrible Oval Office meeting back in February to now. Trump looks like he's really embracing Zelensky and Ukraine.
The performance by Volodymyr Zelensky at the United Nations, do you think that will carry on this kind of positive sense? Do you think that will really help, perhaps maybe change some more minds in Washington?
So I don't think it really is what Zelensky says. I think there's a lot going on under the hood here in Washington, Mark. I think there's forces within the Trump camp that do support Ukraine. One of them is Melania Trump. Melania Trump really believes she's very affected by the issue of Ukrainian children. Russia has kidnapped more than 20,000 Ukrainian children, and Melania knows that. She follows the issue. She talks to her husband about that. President Trump's spiritual advisor, Mark Burns, goes to Ukraine regularly, and he talks to the president about these issues. Melania's best friends are all Ukrainian Americans. So I see this more as an issue of domestic politics. Trump knows what's going on. I've talked to Trump's inner circle. He knows what's going on, and I think he's hearing it. And I think the issue of the children really bothers him and his family.
This is an interesting take on these things, Melinda. As always, you bring something fresh to the conversation, which is why it's always great having you involved in our programming. But I'm wondering kind of where it goes from there, because, I mean, certainly Melania having such an insight and such an interest, I hadn't seen that coming. In terms of what the others are saying as well, it's important. But fundamentally, is the issue as well that Trump maybe feels a little bit, I'll use the word, humiliated by Putin, given what happened in Alaska, given what he thought would happen next. And of course, Putin just carried on bombing Ukraine.
Right. So we know that Trump doesn't like the escalation and that he was bothered by all of the civilian deaths. But we also see that this moral issue of children that I've been talking about does bother him, and it bothers Melania. So I think it's that. But look, Mark, to be honest, there are major differences within the Trump camp. So J.D. Vance, his vice president, doesn't like Ukraine, would zero out the accounts if it were up to him. And there's a lot of other people in the administration in top jobs who feel that they have the same feelings. So there is a fight, and some of the smartest Trump observers say it's really about who talked to Trump last, that President Trump is really influenced by the last person in the room. And General Keith Kellogg has been very consistent, and he visits Ukraine and he talks to the president often. So I would say that the more Russia skeptic crowd has won the day and won the argument, but the argument is not over, and it's really about money. So yes, there's a massive change in rhetoric. Could it change tomorrow? Absolutely, but follow the money. Will the United States continue to support Ukraine with its financial assistance and with weapons? That's the big question, and that's the question I'm going to be following, Mark.
Do you think that the incursion of airspace in Estonia and Poland have made a strong impact on Trump? But clearly, when he was asked the question about should the jets have been shot down, he said yes. Do you think this has made a big impact on him?
Right. Mark, I think that Trump is really annoyed at Vladimir Putin. And he basically said, I know something the rest of you don't know to Europe, right? He said, I, Donald Trump, can solve this. I know more than you do. And he said that he could solve it in a couple of days. And then he sort of extended it and kicked the can down the road. And he's shown that he can't solve it, that the war is very complicated. He doesn't have any secret sauce with Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Putin has humiliated him. And we know that Trump takes this personally. Yes, so yes, I think that the personality and the hubris is a big factor to this, but I also think that there is this moral dimension about the war that does bother him. So I think it's both.
Tonight in Kyiv, there will be more drones sent across. Across Ukraine, people will be worried about devices landing in their neighborhood. That's the reality of what people are facing there. We've got Marco Rubio saying to Sergei Lavrov, stop killing in Ukraine. Again, an interesting side point to this discussion. Again, Rubio getting involved and saying this directly to Lavrov. That's got to be perceived as a positive thing, surely.
Absolutely, Mark. So it shows that the administration knows what's going on. That in Washington, we couldn't figure out, did the Trump administration just not know? And they were sort of being played by Moscow. They were unaware, maybe, but no, they know what's going on. They know that Moscow has been targeting civilians, children, hospitals. They're not fools. They thought that they tried their best to get a deal. They weren't able to get a deal. And I think also Trump is frustrated that American power doesn't seem to really bother Vladimir Putin very much. So we see last week Moscow entering Estonian airspace, entering Polish airspace, and I think Trump knows that Moscow is going to keep trying and targeting until he's stopped. So yesterday, I think that's the headline: is that Trump said yes, do it, eliminate Russian jets that are in NATO airspace. You know, he gave Mark Rutte a green light and full thumbs up to take care of Russian objects that are in NATO airspace. That is a big deal. So, and we saw Radek Sikorski yesterday saying that he as the Polish deputy foreign minister would make that happen. So, you know, the war, if the Poles follow through on that, which I have every reason to believe they will, the war will be entering a more dangerous phase. Like, let's be serious about the danger. Things could get out of control, but the Russians also will see that NATO is serious, and I think that they will be much less reckless in NATO airspace if the Poles do indeed shoot down Russian jets or Russian drones.
Melinda Haring, we need to leave it there, but there's so much more we could talk about. But thank you so much for the insight you always bring. Melinda Haring, the Eurasia specialist at the Atlantic Council and senior community engagement advisor at Razom for Ukraine. Melinda, as always, thanks for joining us here at France 24. We appreciate your time. Thank you.